Welcome to today's VIA Strength Spotlight, where we look at your values in action and see how they can be character strengths that enrich your life, energize everything that you do, and increase your ability to enjoy meaningful, satisfying work and relationships. Let's dive into the character strength called the love of learning. If you've gotten your VIA character survey results and you found love of learning on your list, you probably weren't surprised. The love of learning is a character strength that makes it possible for you to enjoy and take pride and find excitement in gathering together wild ideas over time and seeing what they turn into. According to the researchers at the VIA Character Strengths Institute, the love of learning is mastering new skills, topics, and bodies of knowledge, whether on one's own or formally. It's related to the strength of curiosity, but goes beyond it to describe the tendency to add systematically to what one knows. So it may be that you also scored high on the strength of curiosity if you have a love of learning. But there's something that happens when you have a character strength of the love of learning that's even more than a heart of curiosity. There's something about achieving mastery or wrapping your mind around an idea until you really feel that you own it and you can do something special with it. The love of learning is also associated with positive aging. Of all the strengths that we could cultivate, loving to learn and add to what we know over time is part of what makes the passage of time meaningful. And it's also one of the ways that we can look back on our life and see what has been created with it. Sometimes the things we're learning are physical skills, sports, arts, musical talents, languages. They're all skills that as you strengthen in them over time, you have the capacity to do more. The wider your vocabulary is in a language, the more interesting conversations you can conduct. But it's what you do with that information. It's how you use the skill that gives you satisfaction from it. So when we think about strengthening our love of learning, there are a couple of keys that become very important. On one hand, we need to engage learning consistently, systematically, in order to experience the pleasure and joy that it can give us. Staying connected in a small way to a learning or a creative project where we are gathering or expressing ideas, where we continue to add to and grow over time, is actually more productive than occasional binges of hyper focus on it. The reason is, every time we use a strength, we get the energy and the joy that using the character strength gives us. So more frequent use of the love of learning actually leads to getting more satisfaction rather than just starving ourselves from the enjoyment it gives us until we have time to focus on it. So one of the big takeaways is to remember, like all of your character strengths, with the love of learning, you want to think small. Find tiny ways to engage in and add to what you know, what you're able to do, to keep adding to your wild idea file on whatever grabs your fancy. One of my favorite thinkers who has given me skills or given me inspiration about the love of learning is Richard Feynman, the award-winning, Nobel Prize-winning physicist. He was someone who was reported to have what he called his 12 favorite problems. And his ability to make major leaps in his field, in his cognitive field, he put down to the fact that he had essentially these 12 learning projects where they were problems where if he could solve them, if he could understand them better, if he could do something to address them, he wanted to. But he couldn't control whether the answer would come to him. He just created clear learning framework so that when new ideas arrived, he could easily see whether they would contribute and add to his learning project on that topic, his 12 favorite problems. For many of us, having a couple of problems we care about solving for people we love, that we're fascinated to learn more about for our own growth, having just a few of those can really enrich our experience of life. If you're in a season of busyness or high productivity where the demands on you to produce are very high, finding the right learning project can restore your spirit and give you space to create more of a sense of meaning and growth that isn't tied to your performance and widgets and minutes spent or dollars earned. When you engage in a love of learning, you quickly realize that if you're not careful, you can start to think about the learning project as something to be finished, something that needs to be perfect. If you allow perfectionism or the strain of hurry to come into your love of learning project, you'll find that it can become a source of stress and discouragement instead of a resource of energy and passion and fulfillment for your life. So as that happens, beware of your learning style. Understand what it looks like. Being a good student means being the kind of student you actually are and building on your learning skills in genuine ways. It doesn't mean trying to be just like the person you see as being the smartest person you know. The key is learning ways to engage with ideas, bodies of knowledge, and a way that allows you to master and enjoy the ideas so that you can do something with it and build on what you know. Self-discovery is a big part of learning. And as you learn what fascinates you, you actually learn more about yourself. A great way to engage your love of learning is to learn more about your character strengths, so I'm glad you've watched this video. You'll find that if you have a love of learning, you'll get more satisfaction from methodically going through and making sure to learn about each of your signature strengths, rather than watching this and then bouncing to a guided meditation and moving on to the next call of the day. We do better when we see where we're going, what we're trying to create, and building something we think matters. All right, so as you build your attention skills, thinking about aiming them at a target with the love of learning as the skill you're using can really enrich your growth process. Is it possible to love learning too much? Well, like any strength, when the love of learning is overused or out of balance, it can cause problems. The first and most common overuse of the love of learning I see is intake fatigue that's created by failing to pace and consolidate information consumption. It's not enough to gather information to us. It isn't systematically adding to our knowledge if we don't take the time and space to process, to chew on, and interact with what we're bringing into our attention. So think about your inner sleep librarian. If you haven't learned about sleep librarian, you can learn more about that in Think Wild. It's one of the growth tactics to let your sleep librarians file and process information for you. But in addition to that, pacing the speed and frequency with which you take in new information and coming up with stable learning processes for metabolizing the new ideas allows you to not have your love of learning become an exhausting trait. Another way that we can overuse our love of learning is if we are experiencing the imposter expert paradox. What I mean by this is the sense of love of learning is honored by bringing together a body of knowledge. But if we value that really highly, sometimes we can have distorted thinking about what counts as knowing enough. Using your love of learning is not something you wait to do or wait to share with others until after you're certain you've become an expert. The imposter expert paradox exists because there's the sense that the more you truly know about something, more deeply you understand that you don't know everything. Embracing the process of adding to knowledge over time to form wisdom actually deepens your understanding of how much more there is to know. Embrace the fact that there's always room to know more, and beware of perfectionism sneaking in and making you doubt whether you have learned anything at all if you haven't learned everything there is to know. Good news is you'll never know everything there is to know, so keep using your love of learning to add to your knowledge and your satisfaction. The more that you engage with this skill, the more value you can get out of life's good lessons, difficult lessons, and the lessons we're not sure what they mean yet. Maybe you want to come up with your own list of your 12 favorite problems, or your 3 or 4. Maybe you want to pick a problem to learn more about, or a life skill that you will benefit from for as long as you live. Anytime you choose something like that and give yourself small ways to invest and grow it, over time, it will pay you dividends. Remember, as you begin to use your love of learning, find small ways to engage and use this character strength. Think small. Keep adding to what you're learning, and try to make small improvements in your process for capturing, reviewing, and utilizing what you learn so that you really take it in and start getting value out of it. Thank you for joining us at Wild and Brave. If you'd like your own VIA Strength survey, visit wildandbrave.com/VIA, and you can learn what your VIA survey results are for free.